So let's start with what a backend framework is. A backend framework is third-party code that allows us to make feature-rich web applications. So these are just like the building blocks of which we use to create apps, to build them faster, better, all of these things. So major features of a framework include things like routing and templating and validation and ORMs or database interaction. So some of these terms may feel familiar, some of them may not. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all of them this month, and you're going to learn a lot. But let's jump into why we might need frameworks. So there are tons of frameworks out there. All of them do a lot of the same things, but do it slightly differently, and depends a lot on the language that you want to use in the backend. So good frameworks have good documentation. They are maintained, they're updated, they stay on top of the newest security features. Most of them are open source so that you can use them as well and expand them and build on them and contribute to them. This is a great way to become a part of the web community by contributing to things that are open source, such as web frameworks. Also, great frameworks have lots of plugins and packages that get installed really easily into the framework so that you can have that expanding functionality without a whole lot of work. And again, this is a really great tool to allow us to move faster. I once heard this analogy of you can spend a week and you can design the most beautiful doorknob ever. It can function perfectly, it is designed perfectly, its user experience is amazing. Or you can spend a week and build an entire school. Now, all of the door handles in that school are not going to be perfect, but you built an entire school. So really, depending on your project and what you're trying to do, third-party frameworks can be that school builder for you. They can build an entire school really quickly, get an entire app up and running without a whole lot of work from you, which is really helpful when you need to move faster, when you're trying to prove a design or a concept to investors, to other people, when you're just trying to get something on the page. Frameworks are great, and great frameworks can continue to stay with your app long after the initial building phase. So let's talk about the types of frameworks out there. There are two major types, macro and full stack. So full stack being something that encompasses all of the features. They tend to scale really well, but there's also a lot of features, which means a lot of file size. So they tend to be a little bit heavier. They tend to have a lot of things that you might never even need or use, but they're there in case you ever need them. But they're very supported and tend to also be very well documented, which is helpful. Micro frameworks are there to just help you with the very basics and allow you to add other things on top on your own, but at the end, they're just very basic functionality, but they tend to be a little bit quicker to build with because there's less to learn, there's less to move up to speed with, but they also tend to be a little less flexible because they have one set way, and because they're trying to stay small, they don't allow a lot of custom ability. So they tend to not scale as easily, and they don't always fit your needs. But depending on the project, it could also be a really great tool. So both of these have huge advantages and huge disadvantages. So it really depends on the project, as most technology and web does. It really depends on what you're trying to do. This month, we're going to be focusing on Node.js with Express as a framework and PHP with Symfony as a framework. Now, we're going to be flipping back and forth between these two languages quite often, so it can be challenging at times, but my hope is to really teach you that it doesn't matter what framework you're using, these concepts apply no matter what. So hopefully by the end of this course, you'll be able to convert your knowledge about frameworks to any framework out there, no matter the language, no matter the syntax. Now, Node and PHP both have package managers, and these package managers allow us to install smaller pieces of code into our larger frameworks and systems. So for Node, this is NPM, which you might have seen before, and for PHP, it's Composer. So both of these function very similarly. They allow us to install smaller pieces of content, as well as handle versioning. They allow us to have a cleaner file system because we don't have to keep them on our machines or on our GitHubs, because we're keeping track of those packages, and at any point we can just say npm install or composer install. It's going to take that list and reinstall all of those packages for us, which is really helpful, and when you're working on a team is very beneficial. We're also going to be using a package called MVM, which sits on top of Node, and it's called Node Version Manager. And this is just to help us manage the versions of Node that we're running. Node is in a state right now where they're releasing new versions, what feels like every day. So when we have Node Version Manager, this just allows us to make sure that we're using the same version of Node, and if we update our version of Node later, our projects will continue to run on that older version until we tell them to update. So we're going to use Node and Express, Symfony, and PHP, and with our package managers of NPM and Composer, and MVM on top of all of that to manage our Node versions. So lots of software. We'll have an install process in a little bit, but don't worry, it's going to be a lot of fun, and you'll get some really cool exposure to some major frameworks in the industry right now.